Hey guys, it is a great day to be in room 625. It is. Today we are going to move on past graphing parabolas, and today we are going to start solving quadratic equations by using square roots. So we have solved equations a lot in this class so far, but nothing that had an exponent on our variable. So today we are going to start solving equations that have variables with the power of 2 attached along to them. I'm not going to take too much time on this slide quite yet, because I think it will make more sense once we start solving these. But this is a good little slide to come back to. It helps you decide when will you have one solution, when will you have no solutions, and when will you have 2 solutions. So look back at this after we do the rest of the notes and see if it makes a little more sense to you. So as I scroll down, you will see right here on our first example that we have 2x squared equals 8. And when we solve math expressions, we follow PEMDAS, and we've done that this year. You did it in 6th grade and 7th grade too. That's when we don't know what the answer is, and we're trying to figure out what is the overall answer. Here we know 2x squared equals 8. We're trying to find a missing part of the problem, and we've talked about this before, that when we're solving an equation for an unknown, we use PEMDAS backwards. In other words, we use SADMET. So if I zoom in here a little bit, possibly, if I zoom in here, and I want to figure out what does x have to be to make this true, the first thing I have to do is identify my variable, and there it is right there. Now I need to get that variable all by itself. I need to isolate that variable. To do that, I work backwards. I follow SADMAT. Do I have any subtraction or addition attached to that variable? No. Do I have any division or multiplication? Yes. So I will need to do the inverse of multiplying by 2, because my coefficient is 2. So I am going to divide by 2. My 2's cancel out, and I'm left with x squared equals 4. Now, just like the previous step where I had x squared times 2, so I divided by 2, I did the inverse. Now I have x to the second power. The inverse of taking a number to the second power is taking the square root of a number. So I am going to take the square root of both sides of this. When I do that, the square root and the squared symbol cancel each other out, which leaves me with just x on the left side. And on the right hand side, I have the square root of 4. Well, square root means what number times itself equals 4. Well, of course, 2 is one of the options, because 2 times 2 is 4, but negative 2 times negative 2 is also 4, so positive 2 and negative 2 are both answers. And the easiest way to write that is just to write a plus sign on top of a minus sign, and we would read that as x equals plus or minus 2. So if I zoom out a little bit on this first example, you will see that to solve it, we solve it like a normal equation. We get x all by itself, but now instead of it being x equals, we have that square root attached. So the very last thing we'll do on almost all of these problems is to take the square root very last. So if I move on to the next problem, here I have m squared minus 18 equals negative 18. So I have to do PEMDAS backwards after I find my variable. Here's my variable. What's being done to it? Well, 18's being taken away. So I'm going to add 18. My 18 and negative 18 cancel out. I'm left with m squared equals 0. To get m by itself, I take the square root of both sides, and I'm left with m equals 0 as my answer. This time I only have one answer. If I scroll back up real quick, it says if x squared equals 0, or if x squared equals d and d equals 0, we'll have one solution, which is x equals 0, like we did in the last problem. On the first problem we did, we had d was greater than 0, so we were left with plus or minus whatever the square root of the d term was. Back down to another example. So if I look right here, step 1, I find my variable. There it is. I do PEMDAS backwards. So I do SADMAT. Do I have any subtraction or addition? Yes, I do. So I need to get rid of that positive 12 term by subtracting 12 from both sides. And I'm left with b squared equals negative 7. I take the square root of b squared. I take the square root of negative 7, but ruh-roh, I can't take the square root of a negative number. That is not possible without going to the imaginary realm, which we're not doing today. So if I am left with my b squared equaling a negative term, a negative constant, that's not possible. So for those type of problems, we will just write no solutions. Go on to the next one. 4z squared minus 7 equals 2. There is my variable term right there, my variable, which is z. I am going to do PEMDAS backwards, so I'm going to follow the rules of SADMEP, and I'm writing that down right as I speak. So step 1 would be to see if I have any subtraction or addition. I do, so I'm going to get rid of that negative 7 by adding 7 to both sides. They cancel out. I'm left with 4z squared equals 9. I do not have any addition or subtraction left, but I do have multiplication. I have 4 times my z, so I'm going to divide by 4, divide by 4. My 4's cancel out, and I'm left with z squared equals 9/4. So the last thing I have to do is follow my exponents and take the square root of both sides. Square root. Z squared, the square root of that would be just simply z. And the square root of 9/4 would be 3/2. And 3/2 times 3/2 equals 9/4. But so does a negative 3/2 times a negative 3/2 equals 9/4. So my answer is z equals plus or minus 3/2. Hopefully that first video helped you out a little bit.